Today on the podcast, we complete our mission on planet SR-388. Welcome to Lore Party, the podcast that explores the stories, characters, and lore behind some of our favorite video game universes. I'm your host, Neil.
And I'm Lawerence.
And we're wrapping up our discussion on Metroid II: Return of Samus. And Lawerence, just to check in, where were you at exactly when we had left the last one? I think you had the Varia suit and you went through a couple of beams already, right?
Right. I had the Varia suit and I had the wave beam and lost it, and so I was, Old Faithful, the ice beam.
Which I'm sure you found out pretty quickly, that's not the same ice beam from the last one exactly, huh?
No, it's the lukewarm ice beam of lies, I've come to realize.
These Metroids are evolving, they're adapting.
Right, and I went through 2 evolutions of Metroid, so... They were still flying around at the time.
It's just horrifying when you can't stop them anymore, since they were the big threat at the end of the original Zero mission, and that was the whole point. Freeze them, 5 missiles, great, we did it. No more.
Right. And honestly, I can see why they were considered such a great threat to the galaxy.
And they didn't even know they could evolve. Nobody knew except for you when you found out.
Right. So I'm like, everybody was complaining about, fighting those larvae with teeth. I'm like,
right.
Wait till you see a queen.
So now that you've completed the game, do you have some more questions just about the world in general?
Yeah, actually, I have a couple questions. So the last time we discussed the Chozo's hand in creating the Metroid, and then from what I see now, and from my own personal experiences with the last games, it seemed like you could have, I don't know, it seems like Metroid come about in a few different ways, I guess is the good way to put it. So what came first, the Metroid Queen or those floating death Metroid larvae?
Fantastic question. The Metroid or the egg? So the original larva that we encounter, in universe Metroid, the Galactic Federation found these, created on SR-388, fought them on Zebes, that's what came first. That creature was created. So that Metroid larva was the first creature created. It was created on SR-388, and because that happened, they needed more. They didn't know this evolution was going to happen. The Chozo weren't sitting around to see what's going to happen with the Metroid. They clone it by exposing it to beta rays the same way as that the pirates were cloning it on Zebes. So what happened was you have all these creatures and you don't know what's going to happen with them because you don't have time. And one eventually, possibly the very first one, evolved into the Metroid Queen.
So far in this timeline of evolution or
yeah.
lifespan, so you can either create a ton of Metroid by blasting them with some sort of
beta ray is the only real explanation we have.
Okay, you can blast them with a beta ray and make more Metroid, or right. We have the whole Queen situation.
Right, and that's just a horrifying concept, honestly, is that Queen Metroid. That it's a horrifying creature because it lays eggs. No one knew that these things were going to organically reproduce. And it's not even real reproduction. It just it does it on its own. It doesn't need a mate or anything. There's no Omega Metroid doing its thing with it. But it's motherly. It's raising these Metroids. The pits on the Queen's armor nurture baby Metroids to the larval stage, and if that Metroid has the genetic potential, no one knows what causes it, but if it has the potential, it will go from the Omega stage to the Queen stage. And it seems like it's almost like a bee colony or something, there's only one at a time.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I had kind of picked up, that, it's we only have one Queen right now, but we have a lot of higher level Metroid the deeper we go down. It's almost like they're in that cave, protecting the queen, so to speak, from like any foreign intruders.
Right, and like we spoke about the last episode, the deeper you go, the less regular enemies there are, and then you find those 2 Omega Metroids, and you're like, oh, these things definitely slaughtered anything that came through here.
Right. I can still hear their, like, that really shrill 8-bit, thing, like, sound
They
in
were...
my sleep.
Not the Omega, but the stage before, the Zeta Metroids, seeing those in the remade game were absolutely horrifying. Because, like, they're, in the original, like, they're just these fat, pudgy, little round guys, and you're like, oh, they're kind of cute. Like,
right.
They're practically the Xenomorph in the new game, and it's wild. But back to the Queen real quick. I don't know if you noticed this, like, just speaking about how it's motherly, and these Metroids obviously are... like any creature trying to ensure the survival of their species. In the fight with the Queen, you can take a tunnel under it if you're low enough on health and to get out of there, and you come across a broken statue that holds the ice beam, and you can infer that these Metroids destroyed it. Just, they need to survive. There's an ice beam statue right next to it. Get that out of here. So you can go pick up the ice beam. You can still even blast the Queen with it. It'll barely work, but you can do it instead of using 150 missiles. Yeah. Which did you defeat the Queen with missiles?
Yes, I defeated the Queen with missiles.
Did you find out about the better way to do it?
Oh yes, I did actually, which was fun.
Oh, isn't it satisfying?
Right. Yes. And it was weird because I got that ice beam, and I didn't pay attention to what you were just saying, where it's like, hey, this is just like, there's this ice beam over here, and it was just like destroyed by these things because they're like, hey, what can harm us? It's ice.
Right.
That's actually funny. I was just like, oh my god.
It's the one environmental thing not on SR388. There's no icy cavern or room or anything, so like the Chozo definitely made that as a weakness in it to control it if it got out of hand. Probably, most likely, but they didn't expect it to evolve, which is why it's not working on the Alpha, the Gamma, the Zeta, the Omega, Yeah,
and it makes sense because they're like essentially like housed in this volcano. So it's like, hey, if there's ever a place where I'm not going to freeze, it's probably going to be deep inside the bowels of an active volcano. And like, when I picked up the ice beam and everything, I didn't think about it that way. I was like, oh my god, I must have just stumbled on to like the greatest secret ever. I went from like one pathetic ice beam to an ice beam that was like worthy of being called the ice beam.
So, I mean, and like the entire time, like, these Metroids have that soft, squishy membrane. You're going to freeze that, shatter them, whatever. And obviously, as they develop armor over it, that's not likely. But the Queen, what blew my mind when I originally played this, and of course, I had no idea at the time, you go into Morph Ball mode and go down its throat and lay bombs in its stomach.
I didn't know that.
That is the way to play this game and do that boss fight. Oh, I'll tell you right now, it is so satisfying.
Holy shit. I've always wondered what the like point of the little shitty mines besides like giving you an extra jump.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god.
Yeah, because the Metroids, like, of all of them, their main weakness is that squishy little membrane, and now you can go inside of it in the Queen and damage it from the inside. But obviously, the Queen retains all the normal Metroid properties. The second you go inside, it begins draining you of your life force. So it's practically a suicide mission. You need to get in and out as fast as possible.
Hey, that's actually more satisfying than just basically launching a whole arsenal of missiles at it.
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah. So, why is SR388 the only time we actually see Metroid evolution? Like, to the extent where we're seeing, like, oh my god, guys, there's a queen in here, and,
right.
Like, why don't the rays that cause them to multiply affect their evolution?
The answer, more or less, it seems to be, is that it has something to do with the environment and the natural stimuli around it. Now, in the remake, there is something called aeion energy, aeion. And it's in the game, it's mostly just used as a mechanic to give you like 4 new powers, whatever. But you keep seeing it in these little like art pieces and motifs as this big yellow, golden flowing energy. And it's an energy that seemed to be produced by the planet itself, and from what we can tell mechanically and maybe lore-wise, it's stored in all living things. So where my head's at on this, and most of the community probably, is that it triggered the metamorphosis in the Metroids. This stuff, as far as anyone knows, isn't on any other planet.
It's basically like getting one of those evolution stones in Pokemon, but for a really dangerous life-sucking creature.
Yeah. Like, who would have thunk that this perfect what is it, the ultimate warrior is what the Chozo called it, that it was going to get even deadlier.
Right.
No one would have thunk that.
And it was nature that did it.
Yeah, energy that the Chozo are harnessing because they just love playing God.
Right, and my God, I swear to God, like, for people who have done so good, they have, like, boned everyone.
Oh, they messed up, man. They messed up. And they're such a peaceful, like, technologically advanced people. They blew it. And what's interesting, so beyond the Aeon stuff, like, just speaking about it environmentally, like we see in Fusion, I think it's really like the first like environmental, like it's Sector 1 of Fusion, that we see the environment is a replica of SR388. It's the same the horned toads, the little frog guys, like it's pretty much that upper crust where it's just grassy and rocky and a little humid looking.
When in Metroid Fusion, wasn't there something that was going on with SR388 also, and they were like collecting specimen?
The whole deal with that, because the game opens with you exploring on SR388 with some researchers because there's no more Metroids. And the whole reason, I think we covered this in the last one, I'll reiterate it, the entire reason, the only reason the Metroids were created was to combat the X-Parasite. Now that predator no longer exists, guess what comes out? The X-Parasite. And it's arguably, it's an equally bad threat. It's still going to destroy all life like a Metroid would. So it's a fighting with fire situation is what the Chozo created.
It's funny because it's like the Chozo's original decision to confront this parasite instead of letting it like stay in its natural habitat, so to speak, seems like it caused a greater issue, and then we caused an even greater issue by getting rid of what they used to fix this whole thing in the first place.
Every time you clean a mess, it makes a bigger mess.
Yeah, so it's like cleaning up a like spilled juice with a dirty dish towel. It's like your mind is in the right spot, but you're just making it worse ultimately.
Exactly. But hey, man, it's a government job. You're getting paid. And speaking of the government, I do like at this point, when you really analyze it, the Galactic Federation is pulling some really strange, dubious moves, because they sure seem to want to know a lot about the Metroid, which obviously you want to know about this ultimate warrior that's going to go around and kill everyone, but right. They're really investing in research, and we really start seeing that in Metroid Fusion. How did you feel after defeating the Queen, like, and you saw that little scene happen? You want to describe that? Because I'm sure that had to be weird how serene it was compared to, like, the deathly fight and, like, anxiety you were probably riddled with, like, going through this planet.
I figured it was going to be like, okay, here's this hard boss, and then, like, now here's this even harder boss that we're throwing at you when you're, like, weak. And I was just like, okay, this is about to suck. And then I'm like, no, here's this little, like, tiny Metroid that's...
a baby Metroid hatches right in front of you.
And it's not giant and creepy or trying to, like, suck the life out of me. It's, like, literally just like, holy crap, you're my mom, and now I'm gonna
It thinks you're mom, yeah. And that just nice music plays. And, I mean, honestly, you have to think, like, from a story perspective, Samus makes the decision... rather, you make the decision, even, you can say, not to kill.
Right.
Like, your whole mission is kill the Metroids, and one just hatched in front of you, and you just kind of let it hang out.
Samus, of course, is a badass, but she's not, like, heartless. And it's funny because, like, that little bit of flexibility, I guess, that she has in her personality to not always be cutthroat and care about the mission entirely, those are the points that, like, have, like, a greater impact on her going forward.
And she's a bounty hunter. She's freelance. She doesn't owe anyone anything. She did her job and eliminated the Metroids on the planet. Like, this was her choice, and it's great that she even got to make that.
And it's like, it's something that's good. It's something that, like, ultimately will benefit her.
Right. And honestly, this moment, like, that scene is the most important point in the Metroid franchise.
Yes.
This kicks off everything that happens from here on out in a giant butterfly effect.
Right. And I honestly feel like this is the point in the game that, like, where like, you really get the Metroid title from.
Right. Yeah. That, honestly, yes, you're absolutely right.
And it was awesome. Like, it was like really cool to see. It was like, it was something that, since I didn't beat this game, I played Fusion, and then I'm like, oh, okay, this apparently happened, and then I'm like, holy crap, this is when that happened. So it's awesome.
And now you get to just peacefully leave the planet with it. There's nothing in your way, just nice, somber, not somber, but just relaxing music for the first time in this game.
Oh my god, yes.
Oh, the music's so bad in this. Like, play this with the sound off if you ever play the original.
Yes, it's
until that scene.
It's literally noise torture. So I do have another question too.
Yes, shoot.
Who do you think disturbed this ecosystem more, the Chozo or Samus?
Okay, the Chozo, 100%. And I'm just gonna list off reasons. Number one, they came to this planet and just began colonizing it. They just said, this is where we'll set up, and just put up labs and structures and temples and whatever. They just made a society there. Then they see, oh, the X-Parasite is fucking everything up. It's making all the little horn-toed frog guys attack, and the bats are going wacky and all this, so let's eradicate it. They choose to destroy an entire species, a genocide, an extinction.
Yes.
So now they play God and artificially create a predator to destroy it that they call the ultimate warrior, the Metroid. And then, because they didn't have any foresight to, like, test it out and see what's up, the Metroids evolved because of the planet that they're on, and now they are the thing threatening all life. So, the Chozo say, whoops, and seal it underground. They just seal it deeply into the planet, and then they create robots and labs that continue operating even long after their deaths on SR-388. They just mess it all up and then die or bail.
The funny part, there are funny parts about this, and the seal it underground to take care of it is also a testament to how well the Chozo are at, like, not knowing what they've done and making things slightly worse.
Yeah, like, they just put up some blocks and fill it with acid. Like, that's how they solve this problem, these technologically advanced people.
And it literally, like, kind of benefited the Metroid a bit because, like, you know, they could thrive underground because there's all these like animals and whatever that they can drain life from, and it ultimately creates a queen.
I mean, sure, they didn't get out into the galaxy, but yeah, they just created a bigger problem for later that someone was gonna find out about. Then Samus is just undoing the original design. Like, she's just coming in and saying, all right, let's wipe the slate clean as much as we possibly can.
For this particular question, it's funny because I would actually say that Samus disturbed this ecosystem more.
Well, that's fair. She just came through with some heavy weaponry that was already on the planet because of the Chozo, by the way. They left it there for her to take care of this.
True. And I guess, like, once we get to Metroid Fusion, my reasoning for this makes more sense.
Okay.
But, like, technically, Samus is the reason why the X-Parasite goes off planet.
Well, yeah, but obviously she didn't know about it when she went there.
True, that is true. I'm like, it's funny because there was ultimately, I think I can kind of place blame on both sides because I'm like, ultimately we had a creature that was terrible, but it wasn't like man-made terrible. It's like encountering a snake or an alligator in the swamp. It's like, you know, this is dangerous, but hey, this is where this thing is. Maybe you should just avoid it. And instead of doing that, it's like, let me introduce super genetically engineered alligator killer and let it loose with no regard whatsoever, and then just go away, and, you know, it's someone else's problem. And you know, so now you have someone else go and clean it up, and it's like, well, now we have that same alligator problem that we had before. So no one is addressing both sides, and so that's why I guess I put both sides.
Well, all right. At least it takes them till the very end of Fusion, which still, that is the most recent Metroid on the timeline, and I want Metroid 5, goddammit. But at the very end of Fusion, they kind of take care of the whole SR388 problem. So
Right.
agree to disagree, I guess. Let's move on from this one.
Right. My next question is, if a Metroid imprints at birth, why do you think they are so hard to control?
So when they were larvae on SR388, they were under control. They ate the X-parasites, they did what they needed to do, whatever. When they were under control on Samus, under Mother Brain in the first game, they did what they needed to do, they killed whatever they needed to kill, left Mother Brain alone. So the larvae, at least, seem very easy to control because I would assume, because they were engineered by the Chozo to be like that. Mother Brain was engineered by the Chozo. It's all, it's the Apple ecosystem. It's all a bunch of working parts that talk to each other. What threw everything off was that they evolved. They didn't plan for that. They didn't know, oh God, these things are gonna start attacking us now and we can't do anything about it.
That makes sense. Because I was like racking my brain about that. I was like, I could just create a bunch of stuff and then have them imprint on me, and then I'm like the Metroid god.
Right.
So last time we talked about how Samus was essentially around to like make up for the Chozo's past mistakes. But I would really, after playing this game, really argue that she seems to be pretty Chozo-like with her actions. What do you think about that?
I would agree, and honestly, just because it's a cyclical nature, because she's undoing their mistakes, I'm not going to say, oh, well, because she has Chozo blood, she's acting like them. No, this is all her own choice.
The reason why I would think that she is, like, Chozo-like would be because, I don't know, I guess the way I look at the whole, like, thing, the whole, like, cycle from the Chozo to Samus is the fact that, like, yes, they came to this planet and it's like, oh my god, there's this creature that's, like, terrible. But the only reason the creature is really terrible is because, like, you're not actually from this planet, you're colonizing it. So you're kind of, like, outside of the natural, like, order
this is their
things.
World. You're just living in it,
Right. So it's not like these creatures pose a threat. Creating something to get them is what poses a threat, to be honest. So, like, coming back in and like eliminating these other creatures is kind of Chozo like to me, but like you said, I do agree with what you said. Sparing the baby Metroid is what broke the cycle.
Absolutely. And as Super Metroid starts and how we're gonna end, the galaxy is at peace. The last Metroid is in captivity. Well, that just about wraps it up for this episode. We want to thank you for tuning in and being part of the show. Be sure to connect with us on Twitter at lore_party and leave a review on iTunes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.